Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bandwango's October webinar. Today, we are talking about VIP, travel trade, and media passports, which is a topic that many of our clients and prospects have been talking to us here at Bandwango about. So I'm so excited to be joined today by Catherine Lucas from Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge. She has a really cool experience launching a passport of this type with Bandwango. So today she's going to share with us a few of her findings. I'll let her introduce herself in just a second, but as our other attendees are joining us, I always like to give a brief overview of what Bandwango is. For those of you who may be new to us, thank you so much for tuning in. Bandwango is a travel technology platform that focuses on allowing communities to connect to their local businesses. So really making sure that they're able to track economic impact and measure real people through the doors of local businesses. A lot of our clients will use our platform to create experiential passports that may combine all of their things to do, like taco trails, craft passes, savings passes, into a single easy to use mobile platform that people can access and check in at locations, redeem discounts. This particular pass type that we're talking about today is kind of a niche audience segment, but still built with our really cool mobile pass technology. If you're looking to find out more about Bandwango and how we work with our clients outside of today's webinar, you can find us on bandwango.com. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. And we're on the speaker circuit as trade show season wraps up. For our friends who are visiting IDA this week in Tampa, please go ahead and say hi to our VP of Sales, Taylor McGurk. And then for our New York friends, Kate Skidmore is at the New York State Tourism Industry Association event that's happening this week. Cody Chomiak and I will be joining Kate the week after this one in Houston for DI's Advocacy Summit. So that's where you can find us outside of this webinar. This webinar will be recorded, and all of you attendees will get that recording via email through our webinar platform, but you can also find this webinar in the future or point your friends in the right direction to find it on bandwango.com in our resources section. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Catherine. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us. I would love it if you could tell the audience a little bit about your role at Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge, and then also maybe a little bit about your destination as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emily. I'm really happy to be here and share this experience that we had with our BBR Press Pass with Bandwango. So I do public relations. I'm the public relations manager for Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge, or Visit VBR. I work mostly with travel writers and external media. So that's media that are outside of the 1 hour radius that we represent, and put together a lot of itineraries and pitching stories, hosting individual and group media tours. And then this past July, we did something a little unique and hosted a larger group media tour for the Society of American Travel Writers Eastern Chapter Conference, which I'll get into. But a little bit more about Virginia's Blue Ridge. We're located along I-81, the Blue Ridge Parkway, and the Appalachian Trail. The city of Roanoke is sort of the hub of the wheel that we represent. We represent everything within about an hour radius that spokes off of that, and that includes cities of Salem, county of Franklin County, Botetourt County, and Roanoke County. Our outdoor recreation is the main draw to our area, but we also promote a thriving craft, culinary, and beverage scene, along with arts and culture, history, and sports.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Catherine. Before we get into your presentation, I just want to remind all of our attendees that You can access the Q&A or the chat features to ask questions as Catherine goes through her presentation, and I'll make sure that we get to those questions either during the presentation or after Catherine finishes presenting. So don't be shy. Feel free to ask questions in there. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Catherine to kind of jump into her slides.
Thank you. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, our public relations department recently hosted the Society of American Travel Writers Eastern Chapter Conference meeting July 7th through the 10th in our destination. At the beginning of 2021, we put in a bid to host this meeting. And at the time, we knew that the number of attendees was going to range between about 20 and 30. This SATW is made up of a mix of public relations professionals like myself and travel writers from all across North America. Ultimately, we had 23 attendees, with 16 of them being travel writers and then 7 of them being PR pros. Hosting this event really appealed to us because it meant that we could bring travel media to our destination for several days, get in front of them, show off our partners, and allow them to collect content on the destination for future stories. For these types of events, the travel media typically add what we call shoulder days, where they will spend extra time in the destination to collect content. So we wanted media who attended to be able to see as much of the destination as possible so that they could go home with enough experiences to write stories instead of having to come back and make another return trip, which would involve planning an additional itinerary, more accommodations, and all the fun stuff that goes into planning those media tours. So when we won the bid, a few months later, we began brainstorming ways that we could give media the same complimentary experiences that they get on organized group familiarity tours, but on an individual level. So typically on these shoulder days for these events, the host destination will offer a handful of organized group tours that media can choose from. Due to COVID, group tours weren't so much of an option, and they frankly didn't really appeal to media. People would rather do things on their own time individually when they have, the freedom and space to social distance as well. We also wanted to avoid potentially planning about 15 individual media tours for conference attendees who wanted to do shoulder days. So that is where our idea for an individualized attractions pass came in mind. Instead of putting together a number of small group experiences and then having to coordinate with attendees to sign up for them, our goal was to get a really wide variety of complimentary or deeply discounted experiences and food and beverage options so that media could explore the region in a similar way, but at their own discretion and leisure. So that is why we made this pass active for the entire month of July. It was active from July 1st through the end of the month, and that is because we, again, wanted media to be able to spend extra time in the destination collecting as much content as they could. We also really liked the ability to track redemptions. That's not something that we could do with a physical pass. And Bandwango gave us the option to do that. So I'll go through a little bit of an overview of the types of partners that we included on this pass. We had restaurants, dessert locations. We wanted our writers to be able to go out and have several places to choose from for breakfast, lunch, dinner, appetizers, whatever that may be. We had breweries, distilleries, wineries. They all offered, free tastings or discounted bottles of wine, boutiques, outdoor outfitters. We had a variety of museums, state parks, even a local workout boutique, a zoo, bike routes, adventure opportunities like ziplining, paddling, tubing, and even a dog bakery and boutique. So the goal of this pass was to put together great incentives that fully showcased our history, arts, culture, culinary, and outdoor adventure offerings from multiple businesses. You can also see up at the top where we have been broken into categories. We broke them into categories for eat, drink, shop, and play. Because we had over 40 partners on this pass, we wanted to make it as easy to navigate and convenient for the writers to use as possible. So our destination did have a little bit of experience with Bandwango before, which is also sort of what gave us the idea to use this platform for our pass. We have a savings pass and a Cheers Trail passport that had already been established with Bandwango. These passes were pretty different than the one that we set up in that they were meant for a much larger audience of visitors, whereas the pass that we made was made for an audience of less than 30, and it was really hyper specific. Our goal was definitely not to increase signups, whereas their goal was to get as many signups as possible. We didn't want anyone to sign up for this exclusive pass that wasn't a writer. The savings pass that we had was originally created for visiting groups and teams, but we now promote it to all of our visitors, and it has much smaller discounts. As you can see here, you know, the brewery, it's 15% off merchandise. It's not a free flight or, you know, sample. The Cheers Trail is a check-in passport with roughly 36 craft spirit producers on that pass. If you check in at 5 locations, then you get a Cheers Trail t-shirt, and each partner location does have a small discount as well. So we wanted to come in and ask our partners for a much larger discount because we felt that it was a valuable ask to make because the earned media coverage that can result from having a travel writer come through your doors. So from our perspective, it was really helpful that we had this prior experience with Bandwango because Bandwango was already familiar with our branding. We just had to easily adjust copy and content. I personally had not worked with Bandwango before. I was just familiar with our passes, but I found it super easy to get the hang of. From a merchant's perspective, many of the merchants on our VIP pass were already on the Cheers Trail or Savings Pass, so they were familiar with Bandwango. Because of this, we did make an extra concerted effort to explain the difference between our pass and the previous passes so that our merchants would understand the value of offering a larger discount to this smaller, more select audience. So setting up the pass was, the merchant outreach, I would say, was the most work. We started that process about 3 months before the conference with an email. We did a combination of emails, phone calls, and in-person outreach. This is our initial email that we sent to partners with kind of an overview. And then on the right, you sort of have the fine print that explains it more in depth. We sent this out based on a sort of shot list of businesses that we wanted to include on this pass. And then we followed up via phone to the narrower list of people that we'd already emailed. One thing that I'd say was really important is we relied on our relationships with these local businesses to get them on board by reaching out to them directly ourselves since we were making a bigger ask. Some important components of explaining this to the merchants that I think were really useful were giving example discounts, giving them a deadline to respond, linking to our existing passes so that they could have a visual understanding, and then reinforcing that a very small number of people would be redeeming this pass. We also told them, you'll notice up in the fine print, that we have the ability to track redemptions because we thought that this was a really great incentive for the partners because we're able to tell them exactly how many writers visited their location. And from a PR perspective, it was really valuable to us to be able to know where exactly our writers were going. So once partners agreed to join the VIP pass and provided us with their incentive, we took the rest into our hands. Based on our experiences and just especially given the workforce right now with how a lot of businesses have their hands extra full, we knew that we could get that header image, basic business and contact info, and a little bit of copy together faster than if we had relied on reaching out to everyone and having them send it back to us. We already had all the images and info since these are businesses that we're already promoting, so it actually took less time than you might think. And then about a month prior to the event, what we did is we screenshotted the listing previews and included the link that they would that would be included in their listing, and sent this email out to our partners. So that way, if they had any changes that they wanted to make, if they wanted a different image or more exciting copy, then they could get those changes to us. We had some responses, changes of summer hours. Someone did want to update their copy and add a new link. So I would definitely recommend doing this. It's also just good to continue to have touch points with the merchants throughout the process. The SATW Eastern chapter wanted to advertise this VIP pass to attendees who had signed up already. And we wanted to get all the attendees signed up before they came to the conference so that we could contact them and before they got here. Let's see. Moving on to, so the collateral was a really big help in getting people signed up for the pass. I think about 1 to 2 weeks before the event, SATW sent out an email to all of the attendees for our meeting with this rack card that you see on the right. And they linked to the sign up, which gave them a preview of all the discounts they'd be able to receive and gave them a really nice visual of what the pass would look like. And I think that was really instrumental in getting everyone to sign up. We actually had everyone signed up by the end of the first day of our conference. So these rack cards were meant to be printed materials, but they worked really great digitally. Due to the exclusivity of the pass, we did have to be extra careful that these weren't left out somewhere, that they'd be picked up by public, where the QR code would be scanned. But Bandwango did a great job of helping us keep the sign up link from showing up in any search results, so that only the attendees we shared the link with had access to that. 1 to 2 weeks before the event, we went to all of our merchants and gave them hard copies of this redemption instructions sheet that you see on the left. This was a really important touch point because we wanted all of our merchants to be prepared in case a travel writer were to come through their door with this pass. We wanted to make sure that the writers would have a really smooth redemption process. I would also recommend downloading the pass onto your phone yourself. We would give them these hard copies of the instructions and then physically show them on our phone. All right, here's what it's going to look like when someone comes in and redeem. Here's the steps you're going to take them through. And that's it. Bandwango was really amazing in providing all of this collateral. I just filled out a few simple forms, provided our color palette, logos, links, and copy. And then I got all of this beautifully formatted content just a few days later. I also wanted to mention that I think that the quality of offers on our pass was something that helped contribute to all of the signups. We did have a 100% attendee sign up. We got a lot of positive social media coverage from this event, lots of positive feedback from writers about this pass. We used a hashtag to track social coverage on Instagram, and out of the 55 posts that we garnered, at least 13 of those could be connected directly to the use of their VIP pass. We also received additional coverage on Facebook and Twitter, And then we got a print and digital feature story in one of our feeder markets just a month after the conference in Tidewater Family Plus. As a lot of you know how earned media works, we still anticipate several more stories to come out over the next months or even years. Several of the attractions mentioned in this article that we earned were on our VIP pass, including a paddling trip that our author took with another attendee. Overall, we had 32 redemptions at 13 merchants, but we do know that there were actually more than 32 redemptions. One thing, and I'll get into that in my next slide about looking ahead, is some of our partners, when a writer would go and redeem their pass, they would just give them, say, the free latte and wouldn't, require them to go through and redeem the offer so that they couldn't redeem it again, which was fine. We weren't able to track all of those redemptions, but it's still, it led for a really positive writer experience, and it didn't take away from that at all. So no harm with that. A key factor in the success of this, I think, is that almost every attendee was signed up for the VIP pass by the time they arrived. This was key because we only had to push redemptions instead of pushing signups and redemptions throughout the week, which we were kind of prepared to do. And I also think that the quality of the offer was a really big factor in the campaign's success. That's something that the writers talked about in their positive feedback. So some final takeaways. Media really loved the convenience, freedom, and variety of this pass. Instead of spending a lot of time planning a heavily detailed itinerary schedule, which would have included additional outreach to make reservations, arrange comped activities, etc., we get to give our hosted media the freedom to explore the places and attractions that they find most interesting. And we find that this often leads to more authentic, positive earned media because writers are getting to explore what they really are truly interested in. And then another takeaway on redemptions, when it was really helpful because when we're hosting a few dozen people and we don't have the opportunity to do one-on-ones with everyone throughout the conference, we could use this to learn more about the writers, make our future planning more efficient by tracking where they went. This way, we don't have to rely on merchants or individual media to tell us where they went. We just have to pull up the data. We did have some businesses who simply gave the promotion to media who showed their pass without going through the redemption process. So it's not a flawless process, but again, it still created a really positive experience for media. In the future, and I think this is certainly due in part to staffing issues caused by COVID, we'll certainly make more of an effort to connect with our businesses, ensure that their redemption process is fulfilled. That's a easy fix. And then for our plans for the future, our PR program currently has a physical VIP pass that we use outside of this event. There's far less than 40 attractions on it. They're mostly just free admission. There's not really any food or beverage on there. So because of the wave of positive feedback that we received from these writers, we are considering replacing this pass with a more robust one in Bandwango. It would look very similar to the one that we did for SATW's VIP pass, but it would be evergreen for those travel writers. And there's a lot more that I can go into, so I will hand it back over to Emily.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. That was such a good overview. For those of you who were asking, these slides and Catherine's amazing presentation are available in the handouts section of our webinar platform. So you should see it in the top right corner of your screen. There's a section called handouts, which will allow you to download Catherine's wonderful slides and all the great information that she shared in that presentation. So we did have a few questions come in. Again, if you're just now joining us or you weren't joining us at the beginning, but now you're here, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are talking a little bit today about Bandwango and our capability to launch travel trade, VIP, or media geared passports. Catherine from Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge. I'll probably do that every single time I introduce you, Catherine. Shared that amazing presentation about their experience with hosting a group of travel writers at the same time. Of course, most of our clients who are launching these kinds of passports are launching them in anticipation that one or two or three influencers or media might come into their destination kind of over the course of a few months. So we're going to get into some really great questions. If you have one, please feel free to publish it in the Q&A or chat section. Happy to answer those as they come in. Don't worry, we've still got about 30 minutes of really intriguing Q&A to kind of pick Catherine's brain on. The first question that I want to address is, do we think it's helpful to have merchants sign up for the pass to check their listing? One thing I do want to talk briefly about is just Bandwango's merchant onboarding portal. Although Catherine's team led a lot of the merchant onboarding for this type of passport, one of Bandwango's capabilities is to manage merchant onboarding for our clients. In doing that, we have a merchant portal where merchants can submit their special offers and then also double check what that looks like on the passport so they can see them without you having to go in and screenshot what their listings look like. Our merchant onboarding portal is kind of like a brand new feature that we're still rolling out some new updates for. So there are going to be more changes that make that even more friendly for destinations who are working alongside local businesses to make them feel really confident with how their information looks and is being distributed to consumers who sign up for the passport. But I will let Catherine kind of give her perspective on that too. Catherine, what was it like to work with merchants to make sure that they knew what their offer looked like on the passport? They were comfortable with the way that everything was kind of pulling through into the Bandwango system.
Yeah. So we did screenshot each individual listing. Like I said, there were about 40 of them. We just had a template, an email template that we would sort of, put that screenshot into and send it to them. I don't think every single merchant replied. If they didn't, that was okay. The listing just went ahead as it was. Now that we have gone through this process and our merchants are familiar with the, with this media pass, I think that in the future, so talking about looking towards an evergreen pass, we would consider, introducing them to that merchant portal and getting them set up with that. It was doing the screenshot was easy, but it's not the most efficient thing to have 40 emails kind of going back and forth in your inbox.
Yeah, the easier, the more streamlined, the better. And merchant communication is a question that we get asked about a lot here at Bandwango because it is, one, connecting to your local businesses or maybe businesses like Catherine had mentioned, your initial paper passport did not include as many like beer or food venues. And so I think those are merchants that are always like kind of non-traditional that a lot of our clients are hoping to build better connections with and have included in the passport. Do you want to talk just briefly about like what it was like to work with those restaurants or craft beer locations that maybe weren't included in, your paper media passport, or what relationships look like now with those people as you've started to kind of form those connections?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we, like I said, leaning into our existing relationships that we have with our partners, whether they be food and beverage, attractions, retail, it's really helpful. The partners who are most familiar with the PR program and the value of hosting media, I would say that was, they were the easiest ones to explain it to. Our food and beverage, our beverage partners at least, were familiar with the Cheers Trail. But yeah, this is, working with these partners has been good. A lot of them are people that we are already in regular communication with when we're hosting media. And so it was just a matter of kind of explaining to them how this pass works and how it looks different than our traditional style of hosting, where it might be, hey, we're going to have this writer coming in this weekend. Do you think that you could provide a comp experience for them, or could we pick up a gift card for them? And just showing them how that looks different.
Yeah. So we have some good questions here. What was the feedback like from the merchants after, maybe the travel writers had left? Did they follow up to ask about the media coverage, find the redemption process easy? What was their feedback about the passport?
So merchant feedback was, overall, it was positive. They were all, especially when we did our initial outreach, we got a lot of responses back that were, yes, I want to participate. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'd love to get in front of travel writers. Given just how busy this summer was for a lot of our partners, especially the food and beverage ones, they didn't, they haven't, not many of them reached out proactively, but they did seem to find the process very easy and are always really grateful for the coverage that they have received.
Cool. So during the, hosting your media and the launch of this passport, did you see any trends in terms of the most popular merchant redemptions, or like where people were going to more often in this passport?
Yes, I think a couple different things played into that. I noticed that geographic location had to do with redemptions. That was a big factor. So our goal was, we wanted a really jurisdictionally, and by that I mean at the 5 cities and counties that we represent, we wanted our pass to be really diverse in geographically, not just also in the types of offers that we had on there. The conference was in downtown Roanoke at the Hotel Roanoke. So a lot of the redemptions were kind of in that downtown area. Several people flew or, were carpooling rental cars. So location had to do with it. But then actually one of our most popular redemptions was about 45 minutes from the hotel that people were staying at. And it was the paddling. It was a complimentary tubing or paddling trip on the scenic Upper James River Water Trail with our partner Twin River Outfitters. So that was very popular, and I think that probably has to do with the fact that it was it was a unique experience and a really valuable incentive.
That's great. And then a question again about the merchant portal. So new merchant portal, we're really excited to roll that out kind of like across the board. There's a question about merchants being able to update directly through that merchant portal. They can and should be able to edit and make changes directly in the portal. Those changes should no longer have to go into the hands of the DMOs or, through those request tickets in Asana. We're still working on kind of fine tuning those things. So more information on that to come. But our goal with the new version of the merchant portal is to take less work, is to take less work across the board. It should be more easy, streamlined for merchants to get their deals onto a Bandwango passport, edit them, and work together with the DMO to make sure that they look and feel and sound the way that merchants want their brand, their business, their offers to sound. So that's a good question. Okay, new question here. Catherine, you mentioned that you pre-populated the templates for merchants using images, text. Did you do that manually or was it done as like a file transfer?
So it was a little bit of both. So for mostly just a file transfer. For all of our locations, what I did is I just put a folder together with a picture for each merchant titled, and then an Excel sheet with the merchant's name and all that basic information that you see in the listing. And then I uploaded that into Asana, and then you guys took care of the rest. The merchant outreach and that was the back end stuff was taken care of by Bandwango. So that was very nice.
Awesome. So now we're going to get into some of my questions. Everyone, again, feel free to chime in on Q&A or chat if you have some of your own. But if you could do it all over again, Catherine, what would you do differently?
Like I think I've said, I would do some more merchant communications. We would definitely, you can never have too much communication with your partners. Making sure that everyone is really comfortable with the redemption process. I'd also utilize the text messaging option more, since we did have a 100% sign up. The ability to text our attendees with calls to action, reminding them to use their pass or to use our hashtag on social media. I would definitely use that more often. I even had a couple of writers mention that we sent them a welcome text at the beginning of the conference. And I had a couple of writers mention how much they appreciated that. So take more advantage of that. And then also tying into our really great sign up rate, we had a lot of printed collateral that we anticipated we would need to have at some of our events with the writers, and we put rack cards in their media kits. But it turns out that, all that collateral was intended to encourage signups, and we had a really great signup rate. So that collateral was still incredibly valuable, but we would focus more on using it digitally than physically.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Okay, so how did you keep the VIP pass from being shared with people other than those it was intended for? And then that kind of came with this follow-up question of, are the offers on each download only good for one-time use? I can answer that question and then you can answer it for your pass specifically, but there are different options available through Bandwango. So most of the time when we set the redemption opportunities for these passes, we will say this offer can only be redeemed once, so that once someone actually goes through and redeems it, it gets grayed out in their pass so that they can't access that offer again. As Catherine mentioned, it's kind of like an imperfect science because some merchants don't, assist maybe as much as they could with consumers going through that redemption process. And so occasionally we will hear feedback that someone has redeemed multiple offers in their passport, but maybe they haven't actually gone through and clicked that full redemption. So as we hear that information, our dev team is working towards tracking and updating the UX and UI specifically for redemption. So that's kind of like a future focused initiative, is to make sure that that data can be as consistent and clear as possible. But Catherine, do you want to answer kind of how you kept that closed group focused on the passport, and then also, what maybe your offers were or intentions were with just having the single redemption available to that group?
Yeah, keeping the VIP pass private was definitely a top priority for us. That's something that we can, like I said, we really emphasized to our partners, and it's also something that we emphasized to the attendees as well. For for these conferences, a lot of them, there's the option to bring a spouse or a +1. And so we made sure to emphasize that, that this pass was only for conference attendees, that it was only good for one redemption. We wanted to stick with the one redemption because these are really, these are bigger asks that we're requesting our partners to comp. Instead of a small discount, we're asking them to provide a free item. And so that's, so that's why we wanted to keep it at one redemption. One of the things that we did was we kept the page from caching. And so, like I said, you could only go to that page if you were given the link to sign up. And then from a back end, we could go in to Bandwango and see everyone that was signed up. So if for some reason someone did sign up for the pass that we didn't, if it was someone who wasn't supposed to, then we could, then go and take them off the pass or address that ourselves. And we did not have any problems with people trying to sign up who weren't supposed to.
Yeah, I think across the board, I get asked a lot about like, how do you make sure like the group stays closed? How do you make sure that you're, for our check-in challenges, mitigating cheating? And I always tell people like the common denominator is like good. Mostly people will use their superpowers for good and not evil. And in the cases that, we do have some people who try to take advantage of the passports, it's pretty clear in our system when someone is supposed to be involved or when they're not supposed to be involved. And so that's where that great, kind of safeguard comes in, because a lot of our clients who are worried about keeping it closed groups are going in there to see, okay, we've got the number in line with kind of what we had expected, or, this person, haven't seen their name on the registration list. This is a Gmail account. That's sketchy. So I think that kind of helps too. Catherine, when clients ask us about success for this type of passport, one of the things that we traditionally talk about is the time and energy it takes to create custom itineraries. And every time, media or VIP comes into town, the staff time that takes to make sure that you make their reservations. And you talked a little bit about that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how your team handles media visits or VIPs now, or what that looks like kind of before you guys started to work on either the paper passport version of this in your staff, or even the digital version that you're talking about now?
Yep. So, we always, when we're hosting a travel writer, of course, they're coming in with typically with a specific angle for a specific publication. And so we want to craft an itinerary that meets their needs. We still like to give our writers and influencers the freedom to explore what they want to. So we'll put together an itinerary that's as detailed or as high level as they want it to be, but we always say that they're just suggestions. We want people to explore where they want to. But there is still a good deal of time that goes into that, providing multiple options for meals, providing, specific, signing them up for, for a complimentary zip lining at Treetop Quest or whatever that may be. And then we, for meals, now in the times of COVID, what we typically do is we will give them like a gift card as a Visa gift card that they can use as a stipend and choose to go. But when they leave the destination, sometimes we don't always, we will follow up with them afterwards, but we don't always know exactly where they went, where they chose to go out of our suggestions. And so this is something, having a passport like this that's got a big variety, we're able to just show that to influencers or writers ahead of time. They can scroll through it, say what looks interesting, and then plug those into their own itinerary. And then that also kind of helps spark inspiration and build out the bones of what we want to host them.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So, you mentioned that you worked with influencers in the past or hosted them in your destination. I'm always interested in kind of the evolution of influencers because now I think micro influencers are such a bigger part of what we're talking about in destination marketing. And in my past life, I worked a lot with influencers at DMOs and never thought that I would be a person who championed them. But one benefit of Bandwango passes is you can really kind of see the impact that, to your point, you can see where they went, you can see what experiences they enjoyed. And when we work with influencers on consumer facing passports, a lot of times our destinations will comment to us that it's super beneficial for them because they can actually measure how many signups that influencer drove for a particular passport. So with those trends in mind, how has Visit Virginia Blue Ridge traditionally worked with influencers, and what do you think that might look like in the future of your destination?
So, COVID, I think we definitely started working with them more during COVID because we saw just the type of coverage changed. People were pivoting to our market changed, I guess. People were traveling closer to home, doing road trips, things like that. And so we work with them a lot of road trip pieces, but sometimes we don't typically host them in the same exact way that we host travel writers. We do normally will. Sometimes we might set them up with one of our consumer passes, like the Savings Pass or the Cheers Trail Pass. So that's again where I can see something like a Evergreen VIP Pass really coming into play. But with influencers, we often work in partnership with the state tourism office, who will send us influencers on part of a larger tour of the state. And also for very niche pieces like family fun, pet friendly, and that thing.
Yeah, that's great. So how did COVID impact your destination and kind of earned media? Because I think that was one thing that we saw across clients. Travel writers weren't coming into destinations, pieces were, maybe not being written, from that kind of first person perspective. So how did the pandemic kind of impact what you guys saw in your destination in terms of that earned media?
So we, like all destinations, we really had to pivot. And when we weren't able to host media in market, one thing is we never had a slowdown of requests for leads. People were always looking for, because we were all inside, and we were all looking for inspiration, for travel inspiration. So we pivoted to inspirational content. We worked on some virtual tours. We set up virtual tours so that we were able to host media that way. But it also allowed us to reach more just markets that we don't typically focus on, whether it's markets that are a little bit closer to us than typically. Maybe they're just a 2-hour drive from us instead of the 3-4 hour feeder market radius. We were also able to reach more international audiences because people were looking for ways to virtually travel. So you could go anywhere.
Yeah, one of my big COVID finds was there's this and it's called like a peek outside someone else's window or something. Everybody will have to Google it after this webinar, but it's really cool because obviously during COVID, we all got sick of our own views. And I think that was one thing that was really awesome about virtual tours and some of the virtual events that other, organizations put on, like symphonies and shows, because people still had, so much desire to see a different world or a different perspective than their own. And offering that to people, I think it became a really cool virtual community. So that's interesting. All right, so wrapping up here in our kind of last 5-10 minutes, what's one other tool that Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge is using outside of Bandwango that you might recommend for your peers and colleagues?
Sure. So we use SimpleView CRM and in CMS software. That's something that we've been using long since before I came here, and works really well for us. We're very happy with it. I think that the state tourism office also just switched over to SimpleView as well. So that is a software that we've been really happy with. We use it. Our whole organization uses it, but from a PR perspective, we use it for keeping track of our events, of who we host in market, and all of our media coverage and our media contacts. And then from a CMS side, that's how we do all of our back end stuff on the website.
Cool. Yeah, they're a great partner with us. We have so many wonderful SimpleView clients. So shout out to that team and to all of their wonderful people who are using that CMS. Okay, so what do you hope the future looks like for your organization? Say 5 years from now, if you had your way, what would be happening in your DMO, and what would you guys have achieved or be working on?
Well, 5 years from now, I hope that COVID is no longer part of the daily vocabulary or even monthly vocabulary. And I'm hoping that we will continue to have a really strong presence in our feeder markets, that our brand awareness will be top of mind, and that will be a really welcoming destination to everyone. And then being an outdoor destination, we're really focusing in on sustainability and responsible recreation. So I would love to see that as at the top of our visitors' minds as well, and would love to see that become widely practiced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think inclusivity and being like a welcome community is so important. And I think last year, as we all were living the same version of our lives in our home, it brought people together a little bit to understand, we all have similar struggles. We're all working through the same things. So I think it's really cool that so many destinations are focusing on the diversity and inclusivity this year, and really making sure that now that we can fulfill on the promise of welcoming people back, we're really being mindful about how that factors into our, promotion. All right, cool. So we got another question in. Is it possible to turn certain offers on and off depending on the season, or do you have to start over and create a new pass? So yes, we can do that. What we like to do here at Bandwango is have kind of one overarching pass. So like Catherine's pass, their VIP, their media passport. What we can do is we're able to kind of set those expiration dates or turn those certain offers on or off. So you wouldn't have to go about creating a new pass every single season. If it's kind of an overarching pass, we can help you guys make sure that seasonality stays intact and you're focusing on those offers that make the most sense. We wouldn't want to tell people to go enjoy a beachside hut, if it's the dead of winter. So thank you for that question. Okay, cool. Well, Catherine, kind of last wrap-ups, what is one piece of advice that you might share with your colleagues or the people who are tuning into this if they're thinking about approaching a VIP media style passport?
I would say to lean really heavily into your relationships with the businesses with your local businesses that you work with. Those are the pass wouldn't be the pass without them. So really focusing on building a strong relationship, maintaining strong communications with them. That's also allows you to get the best possible offers. I would rely on leaning into your relationships with those businesses to get really strong offers to build up the pass, because like I said, I think that was a big asset and really played a role in getting our writers to sign up for it.
That's great feedback. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Catherine, for joining us. I think that this has been so illuminating to people and inspiring, hopefully, for those tuning in who are thinking about creating their own passports or media-specific promotions. For those of you who are tuning in today, you can find this recording again on bandwango.com in our resources section. The recording will also be sent out to all of those who have attended today or maybe signed up and missed it. So if you're tuning in late, we're happy to have you. To learn a little bit more about Bandwango capabilities, you can always visit bandwango.com. Check out our Facebook or LinkedIn. Catherine, where can people visit Virginia's Blue Ridge if they want to stay tuned on what's happening in your destination?
Yes, so we are on all social media platforms at Visit VBR, or you can go to our website, visitvbr.com, or you can send me an email.
Awesome. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and for Catherine for being our wonderful presenter today. I hope to see all of you guys next month during our webinar. Stay tuned for that content and the registration link. Until then, I hope all of you guys have a wonderful Wednesday and a great rest of your week. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.